Welcome to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast, episode 49.
Welcome to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast with your host, Jack Mountain Bushcraft School founder and master main guide, Tim Smith.
I'm your host, Tim Smith. I'm a registered master main guide, and in 1999 I founded the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School. We help people become more skilled, more knowledgeable, more experienced, and more confident outdoors by using traditional skills, a few simple tools, and field-based experience. Whether you're looking to go from city slicker to competent outdoor professional, want to experience a remote expedition, or just want to learn a few new outdoor skills, we've got you covered. You can check out the show notes to this and all of our podcasts at blog.jackmtn.com. When you're there, click on the podcast button. And if you enjoy the show, please leave us a review on iTunes. Lastly, the best way to keep up with our programs and trips is to join our email newsletter, and you can do that at jmbnews.com. Hello and welcome to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast, episode 49, where we are going to talk all about expedition behavior, outdoor leadership, and related topics. So, Tim Smith here, joined by Christopher Russell, Colin Clifford, and Blake Towsley. How are we this morning, gentlemen?
Good.
Yeah, can't complain. It's
I'm great.
cold.
Yeah, it's, so like 3 days ago, we were all complaining about the heat and humidity, and here, finally, we've got our nights that are just above freezing, so have yet to light a fire in the stove this fall yet, and now I'm being hazed for being, who am I?
Scrooge McDuck.
Scrooge McDuck, who's too cheap to
Put a lump of coal in the stove.
We were joking that the cover photo, what you guys will see, is us all curled up in blankets, and it started as a joke, but now Blake and Colin both still have the blankets wrapped around them.
Yeah.
It's a little chilly in the guide shack.
It is chilly. It's like probably 39 to 40 degrees in the God Shack. But it's always 100 degrees in my heart. Yeah.
Okay. We're off to a slow start this morning, folks.
Yeah, not enough coffee's been consumed. I'm keeping warm because I've got Lucky the Wonder Dog under the table nuzzling her nose into my knee, so I get my cold hands wrapped around her head, right? Up, and there she goes onto her dog bed. Anyway, so today we want to talk about leadership, soft skills, expedition behavior. So expedition behavior is outdoor ed speak for basically teamwork. You know, if you're a young person involved in athletics, they're not going to talk to you about expedition behavior. They're going to talk to you about teamwork. So it's just a way that they've kind of taken concepts and put the outdoor ed speak on them by giving it that label. So, you know, even so far as to call it EB. A lot of this, I think, goes back to, or at least the earliest in the literature that I've read about it, goes back to Paul Petzold's book, The New Way of the Wilderness. He's got a chapter on expedition behavior, and it's really worth a read. So much so that, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I sat down after reading it for the 50 millionth time and just typed it up, just sat with the book, typed up that chapter, at least the first half of it. And then usually before big expeditions, when we're sort of sending out the medical forms, things like that, I'll send that along and I'll say, make sure you read this twice before we all get together at the trailhead, right? Because it's just good stuff to keep in mind, just about how to make things run smoothly, not be selfish, you know, put the team first, things of that nature. So yeah, it's really just kind of teamwork, right? And I don't know if you guys have any different take on what it is.
Well, it's also it also kind of lays out how you know, your hard skills, the hard skills that you have, isn't everything when it comes to being on trail or even in a, you know, team, any kind of team situation.
Definitely not. Hard skills are hard skills. So let's define hard skills, the nuts and bolts, right? Tie in good knots, how to swing an axe safely, how to paddle the canoe, how to haul the sled, set up the tent. So the soft skills, which is more the expedition behavior, are kind of the interpersonal human skills, right? Being a good listener, you know, how to sort of motivate people, things like that. But it's there's a big difference. And I'll go a step further and say that there are meta skills where you sort of put the two together for planning purposes and, knowing how to sort of read a situation that's maybe going to head south before it does, and maybe, deflect it or head it off at the pass or something like that.
Yeah, and those hard skills, being able to swing an axe and tying knots, those are all, like you said, they're very important, and they're not anything that is it's always good to have that, but
Well, you can't go on the trip without the hard skills.
exactly.
You can if you have a Combar Pro.
Right, that's true. If you've got good enough gear, you don't need
to
skills.
know anything.
But yeah, so when I was a young guy, all my eggs were in the hard skill basket. I'm like, well, if you're just good enough at doing this, you don't need to worry about all the sort of the interpersonal stuff, the expedition behavior. Just drive it a little bit harder, and you'll get it done anyway. And the older I get, the more I realize that those were the insane ramblings of someone who just didn't know anything useful. Right? Because I will make the statement that soft skills, expedition behavior, leadership, that will make or break a trip. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it happen. I've been parts of trips where, they kind of fell apart for that reason. And I've also been parts of trips where, maybe it wasn't the most... People didn't have the greatest of hard skills, but with a good, solid emphasis on, group behavior and group process, that it turned out really, really well, in spite of not having a ton of hard skills.
Mm-hmm. And self-awareness, I think, is what kind of comes into play there. Just kind of awareness of, the situation in the whole group atmosphere, but also awareness of yourself, and just being accountable and able to look at yourself and just ask yourself, what am I giving to the group, and to facilitate this trip to run smoothly, I think is very, very important.
Yeah, the self-leadership, I think in the Outdoor Ed speak, they refer to that, which I don't know, but the first time I read it, I'm like, how can you lead yourself?
I put a collar around my neck and tied it to the back of my truck.
Fishing rod with a carrot in front of
it. Oh, there it is. Fishing rod with a carrot. Well, for me, it's probably a piece of pickled herring. Yeah. That'll get me anywhere.
Yeah.
Every time I lean down to pick up a big bottle full of whiskey and it scoots a little bit away from me, I know that I'm going to end up in a trap. So.
But do it anyway. It's weird how that gets me. Yeah. It's not going to end well, but you just... It happens to me all the time.
Yeah. Well, hey, what's that on the floor right there?
And Tim's gone.
Yeah.
It happened again.
Tim's in the hole again.
Some liquor bottle in the middle of that circle of rope. Better grab that.
Yeah, so, Paul Petzold in the literature wrote a lot about it. We use as a text during our semester courses the AMC Guide to Outdoor Leadership. They've got a pretty good chapter on expedition leadership. The whole book is about soft skills and leading people outdoors. But it really goes beyond it goes beyond outdoors, right? Like good people skills, good leadership skills. I think that a part of any successful organization or endeavor, that's just a huge part of it. Whether it's a business, corporate thing, business leadership. I know two of you guys have spent a lot of time in the military. Good leadership is easily discernible from bad leadership.
Mm-hmm.
The classic case that we study in the literature is Ernest Shackleton's ill-fated Antarctic expedition.
Was it so ill-fated, though? Was it so ill-fated?
For those of you who don't know, they were going to be it was the last big thing to do. Shackleton and his group were going to go sail to Antarctica, walk unaided across Antarctica, across the South Pole to the other side. They got trapped in the ice 2 days. Their ship got trapped in the ice 2 days before they were going to embark on their trip, leave the ship. So they canceled the trip. Their ship, they lived on their ship for 6 months. Then the ice crushed it. It sank to the bottom of the ocean. They lived on the ice floe in tents. Then they were in lifeboats. It was over a year that these guys basically thought they were all going to die the next day. But at the end of it, after what's been called the greatest open boat journey of all time, I think, what was it, 800 miles through like 3 hurricanes.
In like the worst seas
Yeah,
ever.
Anyway, they made it. Everybody made it. Nobody died. So, and whereas when you read Petzolt's chapter on expedition leadership, other things where it's maybe just like a 3-day climb or something, it would totally break down and guys were attacking each other with ice axes.
Yeah.
So it's like, a well-run organization or a well-run expedition, the leadership it's palpable, I think.
Yeah.
Well, it's that same thing you were talking about where Colin was mentioning about like self-awareness and awareness of the group. The leadership that I've seen, maybe not just in the outdoor industry, but in general, is like people that try to like rule with an iron fist and think, and like my word is law. That never works. Like it just breeds like antipathy, and words are hard. It breeds unrest with everybody. Like nobody likes somebody that's like always yelling at them, always trying to,
criticizing.
Exactly. And then it ends up being a point of contention, and then that's when it boils over and the ice axes come out, right? Mm-hmm. Or in our case, Tim doesn't know this, but the reason there are so many ropes with bottles of liquor around them is because I have set them, because I'm tired of Tim's leadership.
Interesting.
Authoritating.
Yeah. Iron fist. Iron fist.
Well, it takes an iron fist to wield the iron spoon.
Oh, I've made a terrible mistake.
Iron does sharpen iron,
Want to eat it with a sharp spoon?
If you're hard enough, you can.
My tongue's all cut to hell.
But Christ, I ate a lot of ice cream.
Anyway.
Yeah, that got a little off the rails.
Examples? Any good examples of expedition leadership from canoe expeditions, snowshoe expeditions? Things that you saw that really worked well?
I think a big thing would be, like, if you do have a slight issue with someone, you should probably nip it in the butt right away, as opposed to just kind of either being polite or maybe unwilling to confront them at the start, because sooner or later that little annoyance is going to grow.
Yeah.
And it's going to grow until there's like one final explosion.
Yeah. Don't let it fester.
Yeah. So good communication, I think, would be a prerequisite for solid expedition behavior.
Be able to have those uncomfortable conversations and and just just be able your presence is a huge is a huge factor, and it can be a hindrance or it can be a strength, and again, it's that self-awareness with how you come across to other people. And I can attest, it's not really so much was it like on a canoe trip or anything. I can allude to my military experience with a lieutenant colonel of mine who was an outstanding leader. He was very high ranked in the military, and sometimes that's kind of a blurry line there when you're lower ranked, and as far as a lot of times you don't really communicate with them on a personal level as a lower ranked person, but Lieutenant Colonel McDonough was a very, very personal guy, and he listened to everybody and took everyone's word into account. I can remember one time me and my buddy were in the smoking pit just hanging out, and he came by and he asked us, personally, he's like, what do you think would make the morale here increase? And we thought about it, and
more liquor.
Yeah.
Much more liquor.
For sure. Well, actually, liquor does actually come into play in this story.
Oh, of course it does.
Doesn't it come into play in every story?
It definitely does.
In my life, it does.
Yeah. Well,
From the time I was 5 to this point, liquor was always a big influence in my
Here you go,
behavior.
son. Yeah, so there used to be a rule in the barracks where you couldn't have anything more than a 6-pack in your fridge. Yeah, which was like,
this America?
Yeah, that's just setting us up for failure. We're gonna break those rules. But and you couldn't have it if anyone was under 21. So one thing that Lieutenant Colonel McDonough lifted, one of the first things he lifted was he upped it to you could have a 30 rack in there. And as long as one person was 21, they could, in your room, because we had 3 Marines to a room, you could have the 30 rack. Now, a lot of people would be like, you're just, like, that's crazy, because a bunch of bored Marines, now we can drink, you know.
Drink your face off.
Yeah, exactly.
Where are we going?
Basically, he lengthened the leash for us.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Has he
treated
appointed
us like men.
sainthood yet?
Well,
because I believe that this man is probably pretty close to godliness.
He is. And as far as, you know, my time in the military, I've had a lot of different leaders, and I've had good ones and bad ones, and then I've had, you know, great ones. And Lieutenant Colonel McDonough was a great one, not just because of, you know, he let us all have 30 racks in our own. But, you know, there was also a case where, you know, I wasn't on that deployment, but he actually got wounded in Afghanistan and got sent back stateside. But and that was earlier than deployment, but he made a point to make his way back to Afghanistan before the deployment ended. He pulled some rank and found his way to get over there. And
brought a truck full of liquor with him.
But just because he knew his presence was that important to his men. And, you know, I've talked to a lot of buddies that were on that deployment, and they said that was a huge morale boost. So, you know, I think presence is definitely a big key there, being self-aware of your presence and taking that very seriously. And like Chris was saying, like if you're a leader with an iron fist, your presence isn't really appreciated.
Well, so if I'm going to jump in here, the thing with the iron fist though is there can be a little bit of that if you have a team of leaders. So when last fall we were on a canoe trip, and we were coming up to probably the hardest bit of polling that we had done, and we made it very clear to people that this wasn't. Like, this is, up until that point, we've kind of been, like, lazily paddling and having a good time, and this was the first real set of rips where we needed to be careful. I think we ended up pulling part of it and lining the other. This was on the St. Croix, and Tim got up and framed that, like, this is serious. Like, take this seriously. And you could see on people's faces, like, you know, it was the first time they'd ever done something like this. So there was a little bit of apprehension, a little bit of fear, which is not a bad thing. Like, maybe you're a little more careful when you're doing that. But the other side is that if you're too afraid of it, maybe you just lock up and you can't do anything. And so our good buddy Ben Spencer, who's been on here a lot, had this magic flute that as soon as Tim was done giving his speech about, you know, like taking this seriously and being that way with it, Ben whipped it out and started playing it. Go on. He pulled out his. Oh wow! He pulled out his magic flute.
Yeah, he whipped out his magic flute.
And played a song on it. And everyone
morale increased.
I hope Ben never listens to this. But it's true. Like being able to balance like the seriousness with also understanding that we're doing stuff that's really fun, even when it is serious, and being able to work with each other and play different roles as leaders as a team is really important as well. If you're on your own, maybe you kind of have to balance all those things together. But if there's a couple of you, you can each fill a different role and kind of fulfill all the things people are looking for in a leader without having to try to like be constantly checking yourself and making sure you're hitting all those marks.
So here's a question for you guys: can leadership is it learned? Are you born with it? Can it be learned? Can it be taught?
I think it's a mixture of both, for sure. I think you have to find what kind of leader you are. Like, what is, you know, like, you know, some people are better vocal leaders. Some people are more, you know, maybe they're not vocal leaders, but they're more, you know, behind the scenes leaders, and they, you know, they're maybe they're a little bit kind of, you know, not so much out in front. Maybe they're more leaders by example. So I think, yeah, you are born with it, but it's just how do you find that? And I think to teach it, I guess, would be to maybe start there. Like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses?
So I would counter that, and I say it definitely can be learned. I don't think it can be taught. I think that
expand on that.
Yeah. So I don't know how to teach somebody how to be a leader. I know, but what I do know how to do for them to learn it is to put them in situations where they have to act as a leader.
Okay.
So you know, it's that same thing. Like we talk all the time. Like it's really hard to verbally or even like by showing someone teach them how to pull a canoe. But if you put them in a situation where they have to pull, they learn. Like you have to. And I think that is a similar thing for learning to be a leader, is just either being placed or placing yourself in situations where you have to make decisions and you have to find. You know, we talked about it a couple podcasts ago. Like you find your voice as a leader or as an educator or whatever it is that you're doing, and you get there by doing it and screwing up a couple times and trying stuff that doesn't work. You know, we've talked before, like when I first came up here and started teaching, there's a lot of laughter and humor as part of the educational stuff, and that's when I teach on my own. That's not my style. Like it works really well when I'm with a group, but when I'm on my own, I don't have
the ability to smile.
No, not at all.
You don't make a joke ever.
No, iron fist. But it's true. Like and it took me a while to find that my own personal style, when I tried to learn it by emulating other people that I respected as leaders, like Tim, it didn't work because that's not my personality, and I had to try that and fail horribly at it before I started trying other things.
Interesting, though. I guess I always wonder, you know, can it be taught? Can it be learned? Because go online and you'll find how many, like, a 2-day leadership seminar, like, where you sit in the audience and people talk at you, and like, I'll just throw the bullshit flag right off the bat. Like, no one's going to walk out of there a better leader just by listening to somebody, you know, tell an inspiring story or whatever. I think, like you say, you have to be in that position where you're making decisions and basically it has to be okay for you to screw it up.
Yes.
Right? I think that, like, that's the muscle that's strengthened in order to become a more adept leader, is, you know, being okay with screwing it up and making those decisions and not, you know, having to live with the consequences as well. And
it goes sort of with that iron fist thing, is that like you have, I am personally of the belief that like the perfect leader is
got a great body,
got a
great body,
just 6-pack abs,
chiseled jaw,
oh yeah,
flowing, blonde hair.
At least 6'2". He's got to be at least
minimum 6'2". Are we talking about leaders or personal ads we put out? But no, I think that, like, to me, an ideal leader is somebody who has killed their ego. Like it can't be I think it's in the Tao Te Ching where he says, like, the perfect master is egoless, genderless, like ageless and all this kind of thing, which is actually sounds like the personal ad Blake was just talking about. But no, I think there's something to that, right? Where you're sort of removing all your own wants and desires to fill this role, and I think that's really important. And
I think it's necessary because you have to sort of put the goodwill of the group above your own, you know, personal interests. And I think in our modern world, like, leadership is often mistaken for having a giant ego and having to have the loudest voice in the room.
Alpha dog stuff.
But they have nothing in common with one another. Like the person who's an adept leader they don't have to be the fastest paddler. They don't have to be the first to the summit. Like, they're the one who's more, you know, focusing more on making sure that the weakest person makes it to the summit. As opposed to, like, look at me, I'm number one, I got up here first, right? But I think that in our modern world that's often mistaken for leadership. You know, like kids sports teams, the kid who scores the most goals, they'll make him the team captain. Right? And usually shouldn't be, because he's more interested in scoring more goals than having the team perform.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about actually that thing about it being like egoless and genderless and all and ageless, and you know who really, really exemplifies that? Now that I'm thinking about it, is Genghis Khan.
Oh, I was going to say.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I was going to say Miley Cyrus.
Well,
It's true.
It is
Both
true.
are very
potato,
powerful
say
figures
potato.
in
How do we know they're not the
history.
same person? That's what I want to know.
Like that documentary about the Highlander that lives for like 700 years?
Yep.
So you're claiming that Miley Cyrus and Genghis Khan are the same person?
I stand by that.
Okay. That's you heard it here first.
I'm making a lot of claims I can't back up, and it's on the internet, so you can't prove me wrong.
Yeah.
Somewhere Molly's out there listening to this. Who is it?
Miley?
Miley. She's out there listening to this.
Miley Cyrus, eh? Is that Miley's sister?
And she's been figured out, so now she knows.
She has to go back into hiding for another 700 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
We always talk about Miley Cyrus on the
Because
podcast.
Party in the USA is the song that defines a generation.
Yeah,
It really is.
it really is.
And I don't know if
It's
you're
a classic fish out of water story.
It is the classic fish out of water story. If you're new to the podcast, I've said this in previous episodes, but the first time I heard Miley Cyrus sing "Party in the USA," it was like she was singing directly to me because I am also from the USA and I also like to party.
I'm pretty sure we said this on the previous podcast.
Right? I think we should say it on each one.
All right. Okay. Just make it
It's a
sure.
defining
just in
statement.
case.
It's a
Just in
defining
case.
statement.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've determined that Miley Cyrus and Genghis Khan are the same person, and that good leadership is not like type A, I need to be the alpha dog sort of behavior.
Yeah.
You shouldn't almost you shouldn't be looking to get credit for anything.
Yeah. If you do the job right, nobody knows you even did it.
Exactly.
That's another Tao Te Ching.
Yes.
So when the leader acts, the people say, "Amazing, we did it all by ourselves."
Actually, now that I think about it, didn't Genghis Khan write the Tao Te Ching?
Maybe.
We can't prove he didn't.
No. We can't prove that Billy Ray Cyrus didn't write it either. There's no evidence that he did not write
No,
that.
there is not.
Was he cool?
Prove me wrong, Internet.
You know Miley Cyrus writes her own music?
Of course I knew that. Are you serious? Of course I knew that. Anyway.
So inspiring.
So expedition behavior, we're sort of talking about big picture stuff, but I think it'd be interesting for us to kind of go around and talk about little things that bother you on trail. Not particular, just little gripes, stuff that you can expand on and talk. So for me, I have this thing about people leaving pot chains and utensils hanging up on the tripod at night when they go to bed. I think a lot of times people think it's I won't lose it and stuff, but for me, I'm an early riser, so I wake up and in the morning I have to filter through everybody's stuff in order to start a fire because I don't want to melt anybody's things, and I think that goes back to that self-awareness stuff we were talking about, where you're not doing an action because it's easiest for you. You're doing it because the next person that comes along won't have trouble.
That's the paradox of leadership there, right?
Yeah.
As the leader, what you're trying to do is to stop people from doing things that benefit them from the perspective of convenience,
Right.
and benefit the group more, right? So you're trying to minimize people's selfish instincts, where they will have some sort of added convenience because it will harm the group. Mm-hmm. So, for example, something that I like to do on trail, and I tell everybody to do it, is to hang up all their stuff on the cooking tripod before going to bed. So I'm gonna leave I'm gonna leave the podcast now. I have to go find a liquor bottle and set it up in the middle of a rope.
Lots hanging around.
There's plenty.
Just littered all over the
God
here.
damn it, Tim!
It'll be interesting to see if my limited audio editing abilities can normalize the sound when you yell like that. I don't know if I'll be able to do it, but we'll see. Yeah. But that whole idea of you're trying to bring out the best in the group, right? You're trying to sort of set the standard.
Above all else.
Yeah,
what you're doing.
What was that term? Muscular humility? Was that the...
Yes, muscular humility.
Muscular humility, which is... I can't remember what book we read it in.
The culture code.
The culture code. But the idea of the leader doing things like, going up and picking up micro trash and the people who are not in a leadership position see that, and you're like, well, this guy really cares. Like he's sacrificing personal time and stuff to do these little things to sort of demonstrate to the group this is the desired behavioral outcome, right? Like suck it up for the team, essentially. To put it in outdoor leadership terminology. And I think that's a huge thing, right? Like making sure. So the four of us are on a trip. And we get somewhere and making sure, hey, let's everybody get 2 sticks of firewood. And making sure you get 2 good sticks of firewood, right? Like, don't half-ass it with the leaning, kind of half-rotten birch log that's right next to where the fire is. Like, take the extra 2 minutes and go get something good that you're going to actually cook with, right? And then you do that day one, and everybody's like, okay, when they say go get good firewood, they mean it, And I think stuff like that. But other examples from the trail, you guys, that... stuff, pet peeves or examples of really good leadership?
I'll say being not asking anybody to do anything that you're not willing to do yourself is huge. I think again when it comes to, I guess, presence is my theme here, but how people see you is, if you're a leader, if they're going to be looking at you for examples. And if you're telling people, hey, go get firewood, but you yourself don't go get firewood.
You're laid in the hammock barking orders.
Yeah, exactly.
Get some firewood, and how about a foot rub?
That's... Everybody hang their stuff up on the tripod.
Why don't you go wash up and get in this hammock with me and have a cuddle? Not again. I'm supposed to be learning leadership.
Yeah, I mean that's I think that's the big thing here.
Even less big picture, but small picture. I can't stand freaking gear explosions. Right? Hey, we're on a canoe trip, and I've got my here's my
caravan.
Pack. Here's my pack, and then here's the 700 small items that I have tied together with string.
Great. Away. So we had a student in the spring named Adam who I was talking with him about stuff tied to bags when people are walking and how it bothers. There's always somebody with a tin cup tied to their bag and just cling.
Clinking every step.
Cling. And Adam went on to inform me that when he was in high school, there was a guy who brought, I think he said it was a 18-inch frying pan, and he just strapped it to the back of his backpack and had it hanging. So it was like a gong every time he took a step. And that, to me, that's the example, right? That guy was just like, oh, I want to bring this big frying pan, and never thought that maybe that sound would be annoying to people that wanted to be out in nature.
Yeah, that would be annoying to people.
Yeah. I think it would kind of remind you of when, traveling through China or something, gongs are oh, that's so great.
And we're back to Genghis Khan.
Yeah.
I'm more of a fan of Kublai Khan.
Oh. Did you stand within the stately pleasure dome?
I may have dabbled.
It always seems to, just to go back to that, the gear explosion in the canoe, those are always the people that dump boats, and then you got to go swim for 80 individual pieces of kit. Right?
Yeah.
And I hate that. It drives me nuts. You know what I also hate is when people don't tie good knots.
Yeah.
That drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, look, we're hauling toboggans, and my stuff fell off again every 30 seconds. And then you look at it, and it's just a poorly tied, non-slippery square knot. The only way to, it's 20 below and blowing. The only way to get it out is with your knife. And you're like, hey, let's try to go through 600 more yards of string on this.
So in that situation, maybe... you to get going, maybe I'd go and tie the knot properly and we just keep going. But after, when camp is set up, as a leader, I think it's important to take that person aside and be like, look, this is how you tie this knot properly, and let's tie this together. Let's set this up so this doesn't happen again.
Yeah. Well, and in that, I think it's important for us to define the difference between expedition behavior with a bunch of experienced people versus being out with students. I think that, what Tim's talking about with not tying good knots, maybe by tying those knots, you take away a really valuable learning experience for that person. Mm-hmm. But if you're with a group of people that kind of, you think they should know their stuff, then I'd walk over and tie the knots. But I think that's an important distinction to make, is the difference between an educational experience versus one where you're trying to make miles and you're out with people that can carry their own weight.
Definitely, because as part of the educational experience, you want them to have that
struggle.
You want them to struggle, but you also want them to have a win where ultimately they can tie the knot and develop self-reliant behavior patterns, right? Like that's the goal of that thing. Any other kind of examples from the trail? Things that you like, things that you don't like?
Hygiene stuff kind of gets to me.
Yeah, washing, I hate it. And
well,
people that make me wash,
Yeah.
I got a problem with that.
No, I have
Somewhere else, buddy. Like,
I have a distinct memory of, I don't remember when or who or what, but I have a distinct memory of a person clipping toenails by a campfire. And like that kind of, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. It's little stuff, right? But that stuff gets under your skin and it builds up. And like, if you
stepping on a
watch,
sharp toenail does get under your skin,
but
and then it does build up.
You know, I think it's frustrating to me that people get out on trail and sort of go almost feral, where like if we were in a house, like I wouldn't sit by your oven and clip my toenails.
I think everyone got it.
Okay.
Yeah. No, yep. And again, that's like people, for their own convenience.
Yeah. It's warm over here. I'll just
not wanting to work a little harder and put the group first, right? But people being gross on the trail, like hygiene's huge, or like people with dirty, gross hands. They don't wash their hands before they eat or something. Like it's just kind of gross.
Putting your own cup in the community pot.
Yeah. Yep. And there's we could probably come up with 100 examples of things, but. Ultimately you don't want, if one person's sick, to share those germs and get everybody else sick, and people just taking shortcuts instead of using like the group dipper and using their own. And it's just, they're taking shortcuts that could have a negative outcome on the group.
Yep.
Anyway. Yeah. And, any examples of good?
No, I've never seen it.
Not once.
Me neither.
Not once.
Never, ever.
Yeah, well, like one good time or good pleasant memory or whatever of some really nice integrity or putting the group first was when Colin here got up one early morning in the winter trek and decided to make coffee before the Canadians got up. And it was slow brewed. Slow brewed over the fire.
Well, he took his time.
Slow brewed with love.
What that was the infamous 6-hour pot of coffee.
Yeah. Yep. Going that extra mile for everyone's convenience.
Once you got it though, like it was the anticipation that made it so good.
Yes.
And boy, did we anticipate.
No, but I think that's like, we're kind of joking, but I think that's true, right? Like if you get up and you're the first person up and you start the fire and, it's easy to just be like, oh, I'll just make my own coffee. But like, if you get up and make like a big pot of coffee for everybody, like that kind of stuff is above and beyond. Like it's little stuff. Like
if you're just sitting and like shivering and like waiting for someone to get up and like make the fire for you and like hand you your dish of food.
Guy.
Like that's what I like to do personally, but I'm liquored a lot. And I think I've earned it. I don't go on these expeditions because I want to work hard. If I wanted to work hard, I'd go by myself. That's why I go with competent woodsmen so they can do all the work.
Yeah, it's. I think from a leader's perspective, it's always important to model good behavior. I think that's kind of what we're talking about. And just here's I have a bit of a rant that I'm going to go on here about modeling good behavior. I am so tired, lifetime, of that goofy picture with somebody and they're standing there and they got their axe leaning on their shoulder with the blade of the axe like right behind their neck, I mean, it's got the sheath on it, right? But never, if you're out there in podcast land listening to this, never rest your axe on your shoulder like that. It's what every goofball has in their photo. But
the Paul Bunyan stance.
If there's a part of your body you don't want to impact with an axe, it's probably your cervical spine, right? You cut that, and the rest of the body doesn't work. So don't ever do that. Like you can tell instantly when someone's got that goofy photo, axe resting on their shoulder, blade behind their spine, that person's a chump. You're a chump if you're doing that.
He's probably borrowed that axe too, so that definitely makes him a chump.
Don't ever do that. Just don't. Just never do that ever. And if you see somebody doing it, shame them.
Yeah, shaming's like, I think we've lost, as a group, we've lost the ability to properly shame. You know, they make
Like
a big
us
deal.
as a group? No.
No, not us as a group.
Not at all.
Shame.
Group shaming is like was a big part of communities before, but now it's like, bullying because you're shaming it. No, I'm just trying to make him conform to the group dynamics.
Which is what, a big picture-wise, that's the big gripe against the internet, is that you can, be a troll without any of the negatives of being a troll, like in a community where you had to see people face-to-face, right? Like, you just want to be like a jerk all the time, and hey, that's what the internet's for.
Yep.
Anyway.
It used to just be for what bars and liquor were for, but now the internet's just taken those two beautiful things away, and what's the point?
Yeah, I don't know anymore.
What we're saying here is go out and support your local bar.
Yeah, duck farts.
If you want to
and
support your local bar,
you take
drink
nothing
duck
away from
farts, and shame people.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Words
that's
of wisdom.
Good outdoor expedition behavior. Shaming, liquor, and bars. And trolling.
Solves everything.
Anyway, what else about this topic? Anything else worth? The horse is down. We're kicking it.
Yeah.
Is it time to
Beat
Well,
it? Beat it some more?
Yeah, I think...
Well, I'm deciding whether I should give it the people's elbow or the Hogan leg drop.
I was going to give it the Stone Cold Stunner. That's how we put it down in the first place. I cracked open a beer and I walked down. Just kicked that horse in the sternum and boom!
Stomped a mud hole in that horse's ass and walked it dry.
And on that note, what the...
And that's the bottom line.
So usually on these podcasts, like around 20 minutes is where it starts to go weird.
I think it's going better.
I think from moment 5 on this, we were... Yeah.
So we'll wrap it up, but get a copy of Paul Petzold's The New Way of the Wilderness. Read the chapter on expedition behavior. It's worth reading. There's probably good online summaries and things that you can find. Worth reading. And if you go on a trip or something, remember, leadership is not the guy who necessarily gets to the top of the mountain first or fastest. Leadership is the person who makes sure that everybody else gets up there and has a safe time, right? Don't mistake those two things for being the same.
Yeah, and don't listen to really anything we said on this podcast up until this exact moment.
Okay, yeah. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to it. Thank you for spending the last little bit of time with us, and we hope that you have a great day. Take care.